Hey, I'm gonna just test this out here. I am doing black and white intentionally. Um, Getting down to the nitty gritty. Every family has its lack of perfection. And you could say that every child is wounded in some way because no parent that I've ever met is perfect. And I never became a parent. I'm the only child of two parents who split up when I was 4. And I'm wondering if I'm narcissistic. I have been officially diagnosed. I don't entirely believe in mainstream psychology, categories, and diagnostics and things like that. I'm somebody who questions authority, whether it's left or right or middle. I'm somebody who questions the military industrial pharmaceutical complex. I'm somebody who thinks that most people, this is just my own personal opinion, you should do whatever you think is best and consult with whoever you trust. Um, a lot of people that are on certain medications might actually be better off improving their nutrition and their exercise and their lifestyle and dealing with their thoughts and feelings in a certain way. But that's not for me to decide. That's none of my business what you're doing for your health, and it's none of your business what I'm doing for my health. I'm an individual human and I can only really speak for myself. So that I will preface that by saying this. I'm wondering, they say that I've been officially diagnosed as on the autism spectrum, and they say that I have a poor working memory, and I forgot what else they said because I have a poor working memory, so I forgot what they said. I tend to be repetitive, and I did my Goddess KRING public access TV show for 15 years, and obviously I have a high capacity for talking straight into the camera, and somebody close to me said, "Who are you talking to?" Who am I talking to? Maybe I'm talking to God. Maybe I'm talking to myself. Maybe I'm talking to you, the audience, if I even have an audience. I know that some people that listen to my videos say they get something out of them. Some people appreciate my honesty and my authenticity. I think some people think that I have really inappropriate boundaries. And I think actually sometimes I do have inappropriate boundaries. I also think sometimes I'm a trailblazer and I'm very brave and I'm vulnerable and I'm strong at the same time. But it isn't all about me, is it? Recently I had a conflict with somebody and they said, "This isn't about you." And I was thinking, okay, the constructive criticism side of me realizes when somebody says, "This isn't about you," are they truly meaning that I appear to be self-centered in a way that is not helpful to working through a problem with them? But I know in this case, so in other words, is when somebody says, "This isn't about you," is that truly constructive criticism that I can use to figure out what's really true and learn and grow and become a better person and work with other people in a more effective way that is a win-win, mutually beneficial way? Or is that person simply shadow projecting onto me and not wanting to look at their own self centeredness by accusing me of being self centered? Are they actually being self centered? So, you know how weird that is. It's complicated. So then I wonder if they say that sometimes people that are told that they're on the autism spectrum and they're neurodivergent spectrum, because autistic people kind of live in their own world because they get sensory overload, and autistic people are all different. They're not all the same. And there's a huge spectrum. The more I research it, the more I learn. And then there's people like Temple Grandin, who is a very famous autistic woman with a PhD who's extremely intelligent and bright, but she actually is a virgin and she's in her 70s and she's never been interested in having a romantic relationship. She doesn't feel lonely, she says, because she's just never wanted to do that. So she's not a real touchy-feely kind of person in a traditional sense. So she's very unusual, and yet she's an expert and has a PhD in animal behavioral science, I think it's called, and she's an expert in telling you what it's like to have her kind of autism, which is a photographic memory. She's not as good with language and writing as she visually memorizes everything, and she has a lot of ability in that area, and she understands animals. So there's times when autistic people are misdiagnosed as being narcissistic or borderline personality. I was in and out of therapy for many years, and I recently got back into therapy, and my therapist is validating everything I say, which I think is supportive in a way. But I wonder if this person, because my new therapist is fixated and focused on my neurodivergence, and she wants to be very validating of my sensitivity and my emotional challenges in regards to that. I have carved out a niche for myself with my art and with my career, working as a full-time freelance person since 1997. But the reality of my life is that I live alone, and having a normal boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse type relationship does not seem realistic for me at all. So I'm wondering if I have a narcissism tendency as a wound. Now, I think that my own theory about narcissism, because these days everybody accuses everybody. If anybody seems at all selfish, somebody accuses them of being a narcissist, especially all of the politicians that we label as narcissists. And hey, maybe they are. Maybe to be a super rich and famous politician, you have to be very self-centered in a way that is kind of negative. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just here to talk about how casually people throw on the word narcissism. So the reason why the video is black and white is because I want to get to the black and white nitty gritty of it all. I think that everyone has blind spots, and people who admire me think that I'm very self-aware, and I probably am self-aware in a lot of ways, and I think I can also see patterns with other people. And maybe that's part of my intelligence. But I also think that I have a lot of blind spots, and I cannot see, there's certain things that I cannot see or understand. And that's why we need relationships with other people to mirror back to us things that we can't see, and to also feel a sense of love and community and giving and receiving with another person. I just seriously wonder if I'm on the narcissism spectrum because of woundedness. I think there's two main kinds of people who are narcissistic. There's little kids who are born into a family and they get their needs met, and yet they still grow up being very self-centered and grandiose. Either there's two kinds of narcissism, and then there's subgroups. There's the narcissistic person that is simply wounded, and that's their defense mechanism. And then there's narcissistic people who are born with a different kind of a brain that's kind of like a sociopath. You know how like some serial killers or murderers or, criminal type people that are sociopathic criminals who do horrible things and then they don't feel guilty about it. I think those people are born with a different kind of brain, especially if you find out they were raised and not abused, and they were raised by a mom and a dad who did not abuse them, and they had a fairly balanced childhood, and they have siblings that are okay and not sociopathic. So those people are probably born with a different kind of brain that's sociopathic for whatever reason, versus people who are wounded from being abused or neglected, because neglect is a form of abuse. Abuse is when somebody actually physically does something bad to you that's violent or abusive. Neglect is just a lack thereof, a lack of love and affection or attention, or a lack of validating and mirroring, a lack of, I mean, if you neglect a baby, it won't survive. Babies need to be touched and fed. But when you're an older person, like, 6 or 7 and up, you don't necessarily need to be touched. So it's kind of like, in my family, there's a certain amount of neglect. And somebody close to me said that it hurt their feelings that I didn't mention the dynamic, which was my parents divorced when I was 4. They met when young in college. And when I say this, my parents are both private people. I am more of a public person, which makes some of my parents uncomfortable to some extent. My parents are both philosophical and highly sensitive and highly intelligent. And I love and respect them, and they love me. but there's a woundedness that all of us seem to have. Like I know about, it's none of, I'm not going to say what my mom and dad's issues are, but my mom and dad both did not get their needs met from both of my sets of grandparents on both sides of my family. Okay, and I did not get my needs met. I'm only here to talk about myself, but during my family, when my parents divorced, my mom had custody. My dad apparently wanted joint custody, but my mom said, no, I don't want to give you joint custody. And my dad knew that he would have to go to court in order to fight with my mom to get joint custody. And he was pretty sure that he would lose, so he never went to court. And he didn't want to take my mom to court and have to declare her an unfit mother and, say a bunch of negative things because he probably would have had to exaggerate some of the things about my mom to make it seem like she was unfit, therefore we should have 50-50 custody. So that's too much for me to even know. I don't even want to know all of this stuff. But the reality is, I was born into a family and my parents did not get along well enough to stay married. And now I have to deal with the consequences of that. And for some reason, I'm 57 years old and I'm just starting to figure certain things out. And so I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. And I've talked to many, many, many therapists. And I don't know if you can hear the neighbor's dog is barking like crazy and it's really upsetting me. I hope the dog is okay. And the noise is really bothering me. And I'm just trying to concentrate on making this video. So my dad did not want to drag my mom into, like, my grandma on my mom's side and my dad did not want to take my mom to court because my mom, when I was 9, said we're going to leave San Diego and we're going to start a new life in Washington and move to Whidbey Island. And I did not want to leave. And I know I've said this many times. I'm just still working through this. So I'm trying to learn from saying this out loud. And I've already told therapists this. And for some reason, I just haven't been able to figure out how to get over it. I went to San Diego twice recently. And I'm trying, every time I go there, I feel kind of like this sense of desperation and like I want to cling on to everything and like I can't get enough of San Diego, but I'm kind of looking for my family that's not there anymore. And what happened is my mom and I left when I was 9, and then my dad and my grandparents and my uncles, I think both my uncles and my dad and my grandparents, they all kind of followed us up to Washington. And they were not super close. Like we're not a super tight-knit, close family, but we do love each other and we each do our own things. And they kind of followed us up here and then we each did our own thing. But my dad wanted to continue trying to help, raise me and be able to see me because he missed me very much. And so I'm very lucky that my dad did that. But at the same time, both of my parents were not able to give me what I needed. And I think that hurts their feelings. I think that my mom likes to blame my dad and my dad likes to blame my mom. And it's very hard being the only child of these two people. I don't have kids of my own. I don't have siblings. I'm going to plug my ears because the dog is bothering me. Okay, I hope the dog's okay. I'm just going to have to plug my ears. So I feel like it's very, very difficult for me to love and heal and grow and to feel. And so I wonder if I have narcissistic personality traits. Maybe I'm highly sensitive. Well, I am highly sensitive. I also, when I listen to music, I see shapes. Yet I'm able to drive a car. I have a driver's license. I pay all my bills. I have good credit. I take care of myself. I live independently in my own apartment. I have been an art model for over 30 years. Um, I I have many different freelance jobs and I can fill out paperwork and I can pay bills and I do my income tax. I mean, I'm responsible. I do a lot, but I'm really stressed out most of the time. And I feel guilty when I need anything from my parents and I don't really need much from them. But I just feel like even when I was a teenager, I felt guilty, like I was a burden and I was in the way. I didn't feel like the myth about being an only child is that you get showered with attention and you're spoiled and all of this. And I don't think that's my experience because when I was a kid, my parents were not happily married, and they were both trying to figure out their love lives and their careers. And I was the little kid who lived with them who knew too much about their problems. Both my parents told me things about their problems, and I was a sensitive little kid who thought my job was to help them. You could say that it doesn't sound like I'm a narcissist when I say that. It sounds like I'm a thoughtful, sensitive daughter of these two adults. But I feel like I developed a sense of anger and a sense of frustration like, okay, well, as soon as my parents both figure out their love lives and their careers, then maybe they'll focus on me. And I feel like at the age of 57, I'm still partly the 9-year-old little kid who's waiting for them to grow up so they can focus on me. Even though I know that's never going to happen, there's some emotional part of me that thinks that that's possible. And when I go back to San Diego, I think something is possible that's impossible, and yet I still love it down there. So I'm just kind of wondering if um, the defense mechanism and the wound that you develop when you don't get your needs met as a child is that you, to some extent, I imitate both of my parents. They didn't get their needs met, and they each had to kind of raise themselves in a certain way because their parents were distracted and having to work through whatever their issues were. So I am trying to pick up the pieces, and I have a lot of anger and shame and guilt and fear and all this negative thoughts and feelings. And I feel like envious of other people and competitive with other people. And so if I have a narcissistic defense mechanism, that's what I was going to say. The two kinds of narcissists are people who think they're better than everyone and grandiose, or people who think they're worse than everyone and they're a victim. Now, I sometimes feel like I do both. Sometimes I feel like I'm superior to other people and I'm more talented and smarter. I just haven't been given a chance, or I'm not getting the kind of credit that I deserve for my intelligence or my talent as an artist or whatever. But then other people make fun of me and say I suck and I'm not good and I'm not talented. And then it triggers my insecurity and my fear. And part of me worries about what other people think, and part of me really doesn't care what other people think. So the kind of narcissism that's just a wound. And then maybe there's people that are born sort of selfish and sociopathic almost. And they have no idea what it is to tune into other people. When somebody says this isn't about you, it triggers my shame. It triggers me into thinking that, oh no, I'm a jerk. I don't deserve to be here. I should put my tail between my legs and run away and hide and don't need anybody. And I'm embarrassed and I can't work with other people. So therefore, I should just go off by myself and just make money. And I don't need anybody. I can just do everything by myself. And I'm embarrassed and ashamed. And I'm sorry for taking up your time. And that's kind of how I feel when somebody says, this isn't about you. I mean, in a situation where they're upset with me and I apologize. If I make a mistake and I apologize, and then the other person says, "Well, this isn't about you." But the thing is, if I do a mistake and I upset another person, it is about me. It's about the fact that I made a mistake and they're upset with me. So the person that recently said that to me, I don't think that was really honest thing for her to say because she said this isn't about you, but what she meant was this should be, in my opinion, it should have been about all of us. It should have been about me and her and everyone else involved in the problem situation that we were trying to solve. So right now, I'm listening to the neighbor's dog bark and I'm feeling worried about the dog on one hand because I care. I think that what happened was my neighbor just went to the store or somewhere and the poor dog just feels lonely. The dog just has anxiety, separation anxiety. The dog's probably fine. My neighbor's a really nice person who takes good care of his dog. So but the noise is really bothering my ears. It's really irritating me. And I'm trying to do this video, but I'm irritated by the noise of the dog. Poor dog is lonely. Okay. I feel so frustrated. I feel like, how am I going to? Because the truth is, everybody has to take care of themselves. And so when somebody says this isn't about you, I have to learn to accept that other people see me as self-centered and selfish, and apparently they feel like I don't care about them. But I feel like I care very much about other people, but I don't always know how to be a team player and have a win-win situation. I feel competitive and envious of other people sometimes. And I feel it's true. Sometimes I feel equal to other people, like we're all unique individuals, but we're equal. Other times I feel like I'm worse than everyone else or I'm better than everyone else. I'm like smarter and more talented than most people, or I feel like I'm more fragile and more like a more incapable. My neurodivergence, can be a problem. So I feel I have a mix of different feelings about all of that. So I'm just making this video to say, gee, I wonder if I have a narcissistic personality. And I'm not saying this to anybody. If anybody's listening to this, if you like me and you appreciate me and you like me as an artist or a person, or you think I'm a good person, hey, thank you. I appreciate that. But I'm not saying this to fish for compliments or fish for people to say, oh, you're not a narcissist, you're a great person, blah, blah, blah. You're just autistic, you're just neurodivergent, you're just dyslexic, I'm a left-handed only child, dyslexic, autistic, OCD. I mean, these are some of my labels. I'm also just a kind, nature loving. I mean, the positive part of me is so I know that I have a lot of positive traits, but I also know that I truly wonder, is part of my wound as a child, an only child who didn't really get all of her needs met. I mean, I'm lucky that my dad wanted joint custody of me, but he didn't try to get it because he thought he would lose. And it's true. I think a lot of times dads get the short end of the stick. Like if a dad is a total jerk, then I guess he shouldn't have joint custody of his kid. Usually they say the mother's always better with the kid than the father, but sometimes fathers actually can nurture a kid better than a mother. It depends on the family. But I think generally, I think that if I was king of the world or queen of the world, I would say joint custody. If both parents are healthy and functional, joint custody is probably best for kids that grow up from a divorced family. I know somebody who has a 12-year-old and the mom and the dad divorced each other, but they have joint custody and they each get the child, the 12-year-old gets a week with the mom and a week with the dad, and he goes back and forth. And he's even told me that it's difficult going back and forth. It's a little bit of an odd transition because the mom and dad are very different, but he gets time with his mom and time with his dad, and they also spend holidays together sometimes because the mom and dad are friends with each other and they don't fight. So the kid gets to be around his mom and his dad, and they're cooperative. And I think that's a really admirable thing if parents can do that, if they can get along well enough when they split up to co-parent in that way. My parents did not get along well enough to do that. Um, I think that my dad blames my mom and my mom blames my dad. In some ways, my dad is the one who is more willing, but apparently they did go to marital counseling. And I think that my dad said that he would stay in the marriage to help raise me, but he didn't want to work with my mom on whatever the really uncomfortable issues were. And then my mom felt like, oh, well, that's not a real marriage, so we can't stay married anymore. And so they divorced. I mean, that's what I've been told. But that's really none of my business. Am I supposed to know that as an only child of divorced parents? I don't know. But my parents were telling me, they've told me some things just so that I understand. So I think that I know too much about what the issues were in my family. My parents are pretty honest and straightforward with me. And you could say, well, the boundaries should be different than that. And then you could say that here I am doing a YouTube monologue about this stuff. And you could say, so I mean no disrespect to my mom or my dad. I love them both. They both did really good things. They both did certain things that were confusing to me, and I don't think I got certain needs met. But I also know that my mom and dad both didn't get their needs met by their grandparents or by my grandparents and their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. And so this might have been going on for hundreds of years. And I'm not saying this to criticize my mom or my dad or me. I am just trying to be authentic and a real human being that's willing to talk about the nitty gritty and the black and white of the childhood that I had. So I got back from San Diego a week ago. I was born there and lived there till I was 9. And I I sometimes want to go back and live there or retire there or maybe just visit there, or maybe never go there again. I have all of those thoughts like, I'm going to go there again. I'm never going to go there again. I'm going to retire. I'm going to move there. And then I think it doesn't matter. Like, it's probably better if I just go to new places all the time. So I'm working on new music. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to eat healthy and exercise. I mean, I'm doing all of these things. I'm just wondering if part of my wound from not getting my needs met, from being neglected, by parents who were neglected by their parents, who were neglected by their parents. So I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying that all families do the best they can. I'm just saying that I think it's okay for me to have these thoughts and these ideas. And I mean no disrespect. My mom and dad, in many ways, I was lucky and they did some really good things for me. My mom put me in alternative school. My dad taught me to think for myself and to not stereotype myself as a girl. He thought I could do anything, whether I'm a girl or a boy, doesn't matter. I can play sports, I can be masculine, I can be feminine, I can do whatever I want. I was raised with lots of good ideas by both of my parents. But at the same time, I felt like my job was to be their sidekick and help them and almost be like their sister. So I almost feel like I'm the sister of my mom and dad instead of the daughter. So you could say that the boundaries maybe were a little bit different than a traditional mother and daughter and father and daughter. So I'm trying to pick up the pieces from that and try to figure out how can I grow up. So I don't mean this in any kind of disrespectful way to myself or to my parents. I mean this in just an authentic, transparent, I say transparent layers off the conveyor belt, triangle siren sleeks by, meaning heal from your wounds, meaning examine your wounds and shine a flashlight on your wounds. And so I'm not saying this out of any disrespect for myself or my parents. I'm just truly wondering, maybe my autism is because of the way my brain was born. And maybe if I have narcissistic tendencies, it's because I didn't get my needs met as a child. So neglect was I was encountered with neglect, meaning I didn't get the kind of mirroring and reinforcement and validation that I needed because my parents, not because they didn't love me, but because they were distracted. They were maybe imitating what their parents did, which was not give them enough attention. But that's none of my business. I can't speak for them. I'm just guessing. I just know that I didn't get certain needs met in terms of my self-esteem, in terms of having myself validated and feeling like if I fall, they will catch me, being backed up and validated. And I need to do that for myself. All of us are trying to grow up and heal our inner children, or most of us, a lot of us are trying to heal the wounded child within and grow up and learn to validate yourself. Learn as an adult, I'm supposed to be able to validate myself. I'm supposed to be able to regulate myself. Also, my parents, both of them, taught me that I should be independent, 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 independent. I'm supposed to be independent, independent, independent. Okay, I think it's good to be raised to be strong and independent, but what if I go too far in the other direction and I don't know how to be interdependent? I feel competitive with other people, like I don't need anyone. I'm just going to make money and pay bills and I don't need anyone. And that's like Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Isn't that what the Scrooge character, what his flaw was, is that he wasn't really generous and he was kind of selfish and Ebenezer Scrooge, bah humbug, he just wanted to do his own selfish thing and not really help other people. If you feel sorry, like if I feel like a victim and like, oh, poor me, I was an only child, I was neglected, then I feel like I've got a chip on my shoulder and like I don't have enough energy to help other people. Even though I know sometimes if I help other people from a place of love, it can make me feel good and like connected to the community. But if I help other people from a place of feeling like a bad person that wants to prove that they're good and like an approval junkie or something, then then I'm almost going to feel angry and like I'm trying to earn points when I'm nice to other people or when I help other people. So then it's not really genuine. So these are just some of the insights I'm having about, like, it could be that I'm narcissistic. It could be that I'm autistic and I'm a narcissist. It could be that I'm a little bit narcissistic because I'm wounded, not because I'm a total jerk, because I'm a sociopath, that I was born this way and I can't fix it. But perhaps part of my wound is that it really triggers me when I get criticized in a certain way. And I try to take in constructive criticism that I can learn from to be a more loving person. And when that woman said, "This isn't about you," she could have said, "It's about us, it's about we," because I was thinking, well, it's not about me, but it's also not about you. It could be about you and me. It could be about us. It could be about we. It could, instead of me or you, us versus them, it could be about we and us. And we could resolve this issue. But the people that didn't like what I was doing, their solution was to cancel me out of the situation. And so I accepted that, and I immediately was resilient and landed on my feet and made up a plan B, like really quick, partly because I was embarrassed and ashamed. I felt embarrassed and ashamed because I made some mistakes and they weren't fixable in the eyes of the other people. They did not want to give me another chance to demonstrate my trustworthiness. And so I left the situation as soon as I could and came up with a plan B solution for myself to get out of their hair so they could come up with their plan B and replace me with somebody else, but also so that I could get away from them because I felt so embarrassed and ashamed and shocked by the sudden change that was occurring, mostly because of my mistakes. But I also feel misunderstood by the other people and like there was miscommunication. So I'm just using this as an example to illustrate my point of trying to figure out, how do I recognize if something is constructive criticism or if somebody is just gaslighting me and shadow projecting onto me. And then this person also said, "Don't play the victim," which to me indicates that this person is manipulating and gaslighting me to some extent. I'm still trying to figure it out. So that was a very troubling situation that I went through, and I'm just making this video to document this. Hopefully it makes sense, and I'm going to listen back to this video and try to learn and grow and heal from it. If anybody's listening, I hope you get something out of it. I mean no disrespect to anyone, including myself, including you, family, friends, people who know me, random strangers who listen. You know, if somebody asks me, who are these videos for? Who are you talking to? Well, I'm talking to whoever wants to listen. That's who I'm talking to. And for some reason, I can't seem to speak in the way that I'm speaking right now in front of a therapist. Like, you could say, "Hey, Shannon Kringen, you should be saying all of this into a therapist's office, not here on this public video." I can't talk like this in front of a therapist. I sort of can, but I don't open up like this. Maybe I should like have a therapist listen to one of these monologues. I don't know, and then give me feedback on it. Maybe that's what I need to do. You know, I mean, generally I listen to these monologues and I try to learn something. You know, "Hey, Shannon, if you're listening to your own monologue, watch this monologue and hey, try to learn something from this and try to learn and grow and heal." Like, it's a paradox. Like, part of what I need to do is love and accept myself the way that I am. And part of me wants to change. Part of me wants to evolve and change and grow. But if constantly people are telling me I have to change and I'm not okay the way I am, that doesn't help me evolve. That just keeps me stuck. So it's like a paradox that the only way you can change, perhaps, is to totally accept yourself the way you are. So in other words, if I have narcissistic tendencies and autistic tendencies and OCD and insecurity and like a low self-esteem or whatever it is, or then and then other times I think I'm grandiose and I'm better than other people. All of those like neurotic issues that I have, um, if I beat myself up and try to force myself to be better than that and get rid of all of that bad stuff, it's not really gonna, that's not gonna make that happen. So it's just gonna lead me to, like mostly what I do is I beat myself up for all of the flaw. I see the warts. I see my warts, and then I beat myself up for having those warts. And so that's not going to help me. So, ironically or paradoxically, is that the right word? The only way for me to change is to fully accept myself the way I am and relax. Like, I rarely relax. I have a hard time falling asleep. It's been that way my whole life. I do sleep. I'm not insomniac, but I have a hard time falling asleep. It takes at least an hour every night to fall asleep, and it's been that way since I was a kid. And I don't necessarily wake up feeling well rested either. Waking up and going to sleep, both of those transitions are challenging for me. And when I get back from a trip, I feel really disoriented. So it like takes me a while. Shifting gears and transitioning takes a while for me to adjust to different changes. So thanks for listening. So hopefully you got something out of this. This is Shannon Kringen, Goddess KRING in Seattle. It is January 19th, Martin Luther King Day in Seattle. My favorite thing Martin Luther King talked about is the poverty and the economic injustice, along with the racial injustice, but all injustice, like economic as well as racial, and all of the human rights that he talked about. And I like that he thought internationally when he spoke out against the Vietnam War. So there's a great speech that he gave called Beyond Vietnam, one of my favorite speeches. But okay, I just wanted to say acknowledge that it's Martin Luther King Day. But so thank you for listening, and I'm going to listen to this and try to learn something from this. And if you have any questions or comments, let me know. And I am going to be sharing lots of fun videos and photos from my San Diego trip. And I'm going to keep you posted on my poetry events and my art model events. I got hired by Dr. Sketchies to model in costume with my Goddess KRING music in February in Everett. And I think that's February 25th from 4 to 7 p.m. And then I'm reading poetry at the Poetry Bridge every month at the CMP Coffee in West Seattle. And so these are some of the creative things I'm doing. And there's tons of other things I'm doing. And we're making new music. Dave Flowers and I are making new music, and we're posting that. We have remixes out now, and we're working on three or four or five new songs. We can finally release another album. We have two albums out. I think we have 25 songs plus remixes. I'm just letting you know some of my actual creative stuff. Aside from all my psychobabble monologue about my mental health, I am an artist, an actual working artist who creates poetry and music and photography and painting, and I went to San Diego, and and I work as a model for artists and a um, medical standardized patient for medical students, and I work with animals, and I volunteer out in nature here in Seattle, and that's all. So that's all for now. Okay, bye for now. Bye. And I got my Tom Petty button on. Tom Petty widens my jetty. Be yourself, no matter what they say, is my tattoo. Hope you liked the black and white video. Bye for now.